Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome. We are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. I see people logging on, so thank you for coming. Just a few points for this evening is just to make sure you're in the right place. This is a webinar about financial aid. It's Financial Aid 101, so we kind of cover what financial aid is, what that means, what is a loan, a grant, a scholarship, so forth. And then because a lot of people are, they're seniors now or rising into 12th grade, they need to get FSA IDs. And so their teachers and parents and guardians and so forth need to know how to get an FSA ID for the FAFSA. So we'll be covering that as well. We're going to start with some general information, and then we will get more specific into people's specific questions. Also, you'll notice that although you won't be able to type into the chat, there is a Q&A that is open. And so that you are welcome to ask questions in the Q&A. I'm going to be answering them if I can. If I'm not able to, I'm going to lift those up to Claudia. She is our presenter, Claudia Rodriguez. I see her here, my colleague from CalSoap. She's an assistant director here at CalSoap in San Diego, and she'll be helping with those. I also want to mention that we are recording this webinar. It's going to be up on our website starting tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in just a second into the chat so that you can see where it is. And actually all of our previous past webinars and things like that, that's where they always go, is onto our website, onto the webinars/blog section. So that will be up starting tomorrow, along with a PDF copy of the slide deck. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Claudia. Like I said, she is an assistant director at CalSoap in San Diego, and she is the one who's going to be doing the presentation. I'm Carla. I'm going to be kind of behind the scenes answering your questions. So if you have any, please don't hesitate. Go ahead and put them in the Q&A. We also have an option to put them anonymously. So if there's something that is personal information and you want to ask the question, but you don't want to share that personal information, you can ask the question anonymously, and you're fine to do that as well. So, all right. Thank you so much. And Claudia, take it away.
Thank you, Carla. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and then we'll get started. We really want to thank everybody's time for joining us today. This is actually it's our first webinar of the 23-24 academic year. So we're very excited that you are all here tonight. We know that there's also dinner time, kids doing homework, parents unwinding from making the day at work. But again, thank you so much for joining us for our first webinar. My name is Claudia Rodriguez. Like Carla mentioned, I'm part of our CalSoap team. And to kick us off today, we will be sharing with you more about financial aid and the FSA ID process. But we also want to make sure you all know that this is just one of many webinars that we will be hosting. And so we have a list that you can see on the screen. You will be able to register for those, just like you registered for today's event. So we invite you to join us. Again, we'll be here for quite a few Wednesdays during the fall and the rest of the year, as you can see. And these are going to be relevant for you and your student. Now you might have a 9th grader, a 10th grader. So for some of them, some of these pieces of information are going to be a little bit farther away, but it's still helpful to prepare, even if you have a younger student in high school or even a middle schooler. It's never too early. So for today, like Carla mentioned, we have a Financial Aid 101 presentation. We want to make sure that you are aware of what is financial aid, how do you access that, what are some of the applications, what are some of the deadlines that you need to be thinking about, but also the FSA ID, which is going to be how you actually get started with these applications. So that'll be the topic for today's webinar. And a little bit about who we are. So for those of you that have participated in our CalSoap webinars before, welcome back. And for those of you that are here for the first time, CalSoap is here in California. We are one of various different groups throughout the state. We specifically serve San Diego County and Imperial County, and our goal is to increase the college going rates among low-income students and first-generation students as well. We are all throughout this county, Carla and myself specifically, but we have a team also in Imperial Valley. So for us here in San Diego County, we are serving high schools in San Diego Unified, Sweetwater, Grossmont, Oceanside districts. And of course, this is one of the activities that we have that is open to the public, again, all throughout the county. And so part of what we offer students and families is that we do work individually with students. We provide workshops, we provide webinars. We have a big college fair that's coming up in October that we hope to see many of you at. But we also provide some programming to the middle school level. And then of course, summer as well. So that's actually a part of where Carla provides tons of very valuable support for students in the summer. So that's just a little bit of what we do in the county. And let me go to my next slide for you all. Let's see, 1 second. I'm gonna just move a little bit of my screen. So the outcomes that we have for today, again, just wanting to make sure that you all understand what financial aid is, what is available. We want to make sure that you know what an FSA ID will be. That is a term that you will be hearing plenty and plenty of times, whether you have a 12th grade student at the moment or you have a 9th grader. And also just key information that you'll need to know to be able to complete financial aid applications, whether it's this fall or in a year or two. So what is financial aid? So financial aid is money that can be awarded to your student to pursue higher education, whether they will go to a community college, a four-year university, that could be a public, a private institution, trade or vocational school. Essentially, for most post-secondary plans that students might have, they will be able to access financial aid. Okay, so that's going to be money in various different forms. And so who is eligible to access this financial aid that we're going to be talking about? And it's really any student that is going to be pursuing higher education, whether they are a US citizen, maybe they were born in the US or were naturalized, maybe they're not. And so if a student is not a US citizen, they can still access financial aid funds in the US and in California. All right, so where does this money come from? So the money that is available for students in the form of financial aid, for the most part, is coming from either the federal government, it's coming from the state of California, it might be coming from the college or university, but these funds can also come from private organizations, philanthropic organizations, businesses, right, corporations. So these are just some of the entities that might be giving students funds for their post-secondary option. And so what do these, what do they actually look like? So we kind of group them into 3 different categories, and it helps us to think about the money that it will be available in the forms of financial aid. So free money is what we like first, right? Most students want to make sure that they can access as much of the free money as possible. And so grants will be one of the names you'll hear under the free money. You'll probably also think about scholarships that can also fall under the free money category, just works a little bit differently, but that's going to be one type. There's going to be the borrowed money, so money that you have to return. That's usually what students don't like, but that is going to be one of the pools. And then also earned money. And so those are going to be the 3 ways that you can think about splitting up the financial aid that will be available. So again, free money, borrowed money, and earned money. And so let's start with the free money. That's the fun one, right? So the fun money, the free money, that's going to be the first one we'll cover is grants. So these are funds that don't have to be paid back. Students will complete a federal application for a free application for federal student aid, more commonly known as the FAFSA for short. There's also going to be the California Dream Act application, which we call CADA. A grant that can be a part of this, right, through these 2 applications will be the Cal Grant. So that is funds that are coming from the state of California. There will also be the Pell Grant, that is a federal grant. The California Community Colleges also have a grant that's coming from the state of California, right? So that's going to be a Promise Grant. You might also hear just San Diego Promise a lot in this county because of one of our community college districts. But again, that will be connected specifically for community college. And then some of our colleges and universities, right, the 4-year schools, they will also be able to provide grants to your students. And so again, those are the ones that are tied to the universities, but it's all money that doesn't have to be paid back. And then at the bottom, as you can see, we've also listed the private scholarships, but these might also be, coming from community-based organizations sometimes, sometimes churches. Again, it's a little bit different, but it's in the free money pool. So that's going to be kind of at the bottom for you there. And then how do we get these grants? And so in order to be able to tap into this free money, right, this money that we don't have to pay back, students will be filling out a FAFSA. Again, this is one of the applications. There will be two that we're going to be sharing briefly about. And so who's eligible for the FAFSA? That will be a student who has a social security number. They might be a citizen, maybe they're a permanent resident. But again, if that is the case, that student will be able to access grants, free money through the FAFSA. Okay, so they'll be able to get a Pell Grant, Cal Grant through the completion of a FAFSA application. Now, for the students that are not going to be FAFSA eligible, we have the California Dream Act, right? That's going to be the CADA. So again, they access this free money through that application. This will be for a student who does not have a social security number, so they might be undocumented, or maybe for a student who has a DACA social security number. So if a student is undocumented or has a DACA social security number, that student will be able to access grants through a California Dream Act application. Again, 2 applications for students here in the state. All right. And so in order to tap into the California Community College Grant or the Promise Grant, this will be specifically for students who are attending a community college. They will be able to, through a FAFSA or a California Dream Act, be evaluated for this grant. And what's really cool about this grant is that it's going to cover tuition, which means that students won't have to worry about their cost of attendance at the local community colleges. Students will be able to, at some of these districts, also receive additional services in addition to the tuition. But this is going to be a great resource for any student that is thinking about community college, because it also doesn't matter what your income is. Sometimes some students think, oh, well, maybe my income is too high, I won't submit a FAFSA because I'm not going to qualify for the free money. But this is actually one pool of grant money that any student, regardless of income, will be able to get. And so this will be accessible to you at the community college in California. Okay, and then scholarships. Scholarships are always great. That's actually what many students are hoping will be able to alleviate some of the concerns around loans or other items. And so scholarships do not have to be repaid. It's very similar to grant, except that scholarships can be need-based, they can be merit-based, which means we're looking at GPA, we're looking at grades, and there is a separate application usually for scholarships. And so it won't just be the FAFSA or the California Dream Act alone. There will be an additional step in order to access scholarships, but that is part of the free money that your students will be able to tap into. All right. So scholarships is a very popular topic. A lot of students are trying to figure out, how do I get opportunities? There is a great resource called FastWeb. There's also another one called unigo.com. We highly recommend students to look at local opportunities, because if you are applying locally, then your competition is also a little bit smaller versus if you're applying to the larger, national or nationwide scholarships. And so this is a great tool that you can have, but we highly encourage students to tap into scholarship lists at their high school, again, in their local community, in the county, again, just to increase the chances that you will be able to get those scholarships. But another important resource that we'd like to point out is that as students are narrowing down where they want to go to school in terms of post-secondary option, we also encourage you to look at those colleges' financial aid and scholarship websites, because they usually also have listings that are very specific to students that will be attending, for example, SDSU, UCSD, or again, you name it, that every college will have a listing that's also available. So that is great, because I know one thing I didn't know as a high school student myself is that you can continue to apply for scholarships even into college. At first, I used to think that you could only apply up until senior year and that was it. But no, scholarship opportunities will continue to be available when students move on to their post-secondary option. All right, so there's also going to be, there will also be other types of financial aid. We always start with the free money because that's what everyone is most interested initially in. But we also have loans. So I know that when students typically think about loans, and sometimes parents as well, it's, you say, no, immediately, we don't want to do that. But loans are going to be, great resource for students who may need this. And so again, loans do have to be paid back though. That is something that is very important. Students and families are not required to accept them if you see them as an offer when you do apply and when you receive an award letter, but that is something that will be available. There is a separate process after you apply to the FAFSA if you want to move forward with loans, but again, that will be an option, and loans will actually be available for students and for parents. So again, as you become a senior and get ready, in the spring, we'll have more information for students and parents on that. Okay, so let's see. Federal Work Study is another awesome resource for students. This is under the earn money category. So for example, CalSoap actually employs some students through work study. So for students, when you are in college, work study can be a part-time job that you can have. Now, this can be working at the library, working at the dining hall, at the dorm, sometimes even at the bookstore. There are multiple opportunities on campus. Every college has a listing of different options that students can tap into. And so you can use that, again, part-time job. You are paid out of a pool that you are eligible for, and you can use that for your educational expenses. So again, that is a great tool, and you can tap into that after completing a financial aid application. So that'll be under the earn money category for students. Okay, so that's just a little bit of the general. And Carla, if you want, we can take a few minutes to answer some questions if there are several in the chat that you might need some support with, and then I can move forward.
Yes, I was able to answer the first one. When does the FAFSA open this year? Which it's going to be December. We don't have an exact date yet, but we know it will be in December. But there's another question that I think is really good. It's about the Promise Grant at the community colleges. The question is there a limit of how much aid you can get from the Promise, or maybe how many years you can get it? This person is asking because the specific program that their daughter is looking at completing at the local community college will actually take her 4 years to complete. I know there are some specialized programs at community colleges that might take more than 2 years. So if you have an answer to that.
You know what, that is a great question. I feel like we're going to have to provide a follow-up, so if we can get the contact information for the parent. Typically, the Promise program is billed to support students for 2 years, and for them to transition onto what maybe it's only a 2-year program, an associate's degree that the student is seeking. In some cases, it's transferring. And so one of the options that is available though for any student at the community college with the intent to transfer is that they can always put their Cal Grant on hold and reserve those funds for after the 2 years. And so that is definitely a resource that is available. But we can check in with the Promise program and confirm the actual limit of the Promise Grant. So that will be something that we'll get back to for that parent. That's a great question. Yes. And like I said, reserving the Cal Grant is also great for any student that does intend to transfer, or in this case, whose program might take a little bit longer than the 2 years, knowing that they can use the amount. And then typically, for example, students that are just enrolling, right, just starting at the community college this year, it's approximately $600 in terms of the figure that they can see for tuition per semester. And so that is essentially what the Promise program is covering. And then students will be able to tap into additional funds, whether that's a Pell Grant, a Cal Grant, or other outside funds to cover expenses for books, transportation. But at least that figure that is approximately $600 a semester is what the Promise program is covering currently for students. And students are eligible for up to 2 years, but there may be some exemptions. So we can get back into with the final, maximum amount or limit for the Promise.
All right. And she did specify that the program there's a dental hygiene program at Southwestern College. And it requires a couple of years of prereqs and then a couple of years for the actual program. So we have a connection at Southwestern, and I will go ahead and contact that person and get back to you. So just FYI, and you could also email me if you want to email me directly with more specifics, but thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you so much. And that is great too. We have on our board of council, we have connections with we have different partners at UC, CSU, community college. And so that's really great that we can just, make a call or send an email. All right, so I know that there was a question about this earlier on in terms of when does the application open? What is the deadline? So we do have some updates, and these are going to be more relevant if your student is a senior, right? So they are class of 2024. Like Carla mentioned, the FAFSA and California Dream Act are scheduled to open in December. No official date has been announced yet. There is a chance that this may open up by the time students are in their winter break. And so for that reason, CalSUB has prepared to launch several events to support students with the application process in January. We are planning actually on January 20th to have multiple locations around the county where students will be able to drop in for support hands-on and also virtually, given that the application is going to be launching much later this year. For the next class of 2025 and on, the application is scheduled to open up again in October, just like it has been in the last few years. But again, for this upcoming fall, we can expect that the application is going to be opening in late December. And so this is actually part of a national act to simplify the process, have a smoother transition for students completing the application. This is a part of major changes in many, many years. And so with that, with a later application opening date for the FAFSA and the California Dream Act, we are also expecting in the state of California an extension on that deadline. So a new deadline just for class of 2024. Instead of March 2nd, we will be using April 2nd for the priority deadline in the state of California. And so for any students that will be considering private school applications, early decision, early action, students are still encouraged, to submit as early as they can when the application opens. You're not going to be penalized for not starting an application until December or January. That's all the colleges are taking into account that these changes are happening. And so again, just know that in the state of California, we will be going by April 2nd as our deadline for this upcoming year. Okay, so part of that, some of the changes that you can expect is that there will be some new terminology in the 24-25 FAFSA that we want to make sure parents are aware of. And this terminology is going to be relevant to you, whether you have a senior or whether you have a ninth grader. And so contributors. So contributors will be one of the new terms, or again, terms moving forward that you will be hearing about. So this will be anyone who is required to provide information on the FAFSA application. So this means that a student is a contributor, but also a parent or guardian will be a contributor. And so that will be very important. Rarely do students have spouses, but some of them do. And so that will be included in there as well. And contributors will need to create an FSA ID for this upcoming year. And so the FSA ID is going to be your login, similar to most accounts. You have a username and a password. The FSA ID works a little bit like that, but there are more components to how to creating that than when you just create a username and password for an email account, for example. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Okay, so for the FAFSA application, so the student will need to create an FSA ID. In your household, you'll need to determine which of the parent is going to be the contributor, and we have a little bit of guiding information around that. But that contributing parent will create that FSA ID. And then for the FAFSA this upcoming year, prior to these changes, only parents with a social security number would create an FSA ID to electronically sign a FAFSA. So moving forward, parents or contributor parents without a social will be able to create an FSA ID. So that will be one of the new changes with 24-25 FAFSA. And so when the application does open up, the student will be able to log in with the FSA ID that they've created. They'll be able to complete their portion and then invite a parent as a contributor to add in information and to submit the student's financial aid application. For the California Dream Act, we do not have to create FSA IDs. We still have to create an account for the application, but it's just a login and password. It's not officially called an FSA ID. The parent doesn't need an FSA ID for that application. and that will be able to, again, it's just your username and password for the CADA. And then when that application opens, students again will be able to complete their portions and submit that. So again, FAFSA will require FSA IDs from students and parents, and the CADA will not require FSA IDs for either individual. Okay, so what does the process look like? In order for students to create an FSA ID, they're going to need their name, they're going to need their birth date, the social security number for the student. And remember, the FSA ID is for the FAFSA application only, not the CADA. So students who are working on the FAFSA are students who have a valid social security number. They will need to include their address, a phone number, an email address that is not a student district provided email address. Most of those emails do not receive external communication outside of their teachers or counselors. So it's very important that students have access to it could be a Gmail, it could be a Yahoo, Hotmail, just not a school provided email address. And so when students do create the FSA ID, which we'll walk through in a little bit, they will need to make sure that they have access to their username and their password, and also a backup code. And we know that nowadays students have many accounts, whether it's, their Power School, their Infinite Campus, their Google Classroom. There's just so much information that they're keeping track of. So it's going to be important that they keep that in a very safe place. Sometimes students have, a document on their Google Drive. Sometimes they have a special folder at home that has all of this very sensitive information. We want to make sure that you will know that just needs to be in a safe place. Students can always, with the use of a backup code, with their email, with their phone number, they can always recover the info, but it's important for them to keep track of that. Okay, so as we are going to look at who's going to become a contributor for the FAFSA, especially for parents and guardians that are joining us today, there is so far, this little graphic that we are able to share with you all. As the training for the new FAFSA continues and gets finalized in the next month or so, we're going to be able to provide a lot more detail. But so far, as you all in your household get to look at, well, in addition to my student, who else will be contributing information on the FAFSA? Here's what we have for you so far. So for example, if the student has parents that are married to each other, right? We're gonna, let's say that if the answer is yes to that, then we're gonna report information for both parents in this application. If the parents are not married to each other, right? We follow the little flow chart, then we get the next question. So do the parents live together? Okay, so if the parents live together, even if they're not married, right, we're going to include information on both parents. But if the parents are not living, the answer is no to married, they don't live together, then now the question that we get is, which of the parents provided more financial aid support to the student over the year? And so then that's going to help us determine which of the parents we're going to use. And so based on that, once we identify, right, in your household, it's going to be different for every single student who provides, which of those two parents that are not living together and not married provide the most financial support, then they get an additional question. So is that parent remarried? If the answer is yes, then we're going to put the info of the parent who provides the most financial support and their new spouse. But then if that parent is not married, then it will only be that individual's parent. So again, this flow chart won't apply to every single person. Some of our students are going to go straight to the yes and both. Some of our students are going to go to the no and yes. And so again, this is just to help you all start thinking about whose information will be going on the financial aid application for your student. And of course, as we get more information and from now until December, we will be making sure that you all get access to any changes that get made to this flowchart by the time your student completes an application.
Claudia, we have a question related to this,
Yes.
Which is, what if a student does not live with their parents?
Oh, that is a great question. Thank you. Thank you, Carla, for sharing that. So we do understand that some students may not be in the physical custody of their parents. And so in that case, students may be falling in the unaccompanied pool. And so it's going to be very important for any student that is not living with a parent or adoptive parent to meet with their counselor, share the situation, and based on the student sharing the information, the counselor will be able to assess if the student qualifies for an unaccompanied youth or unaccompanied minor in the district. If that is the case, one, the counselor will make sure that the student has resources or access to resources they may qualify for. They will be classified under unaccompanied in their school records. 3, they're going to be able to get a letter from the district youth and transitions liaison that will, vouch for that student qualifying as unaccompanied. And all of that means that the student will also not have to include any parent information in their application. So again, very important for any student not living with a parent or adoptive parent to connect with a counselor as soon as possible. We find that sometimes students are living with a grandparent, a sibling, an aunt or uncle. So sometimes it is other family members. But again, if the student has not shared that information, then they haven't been classified correctly. And it's just helpful to have all of those items completed so that the student can confidently move forward with the correct info and with any backup documentation they might need.
And can I give you one more for now?
Yes, of course.
Okay, it says in the case of households that receive CalWORKs, how would the parent income information be entered if they are a CalWORKs household? And I'm not familiar enough with CalWORKs. I'm not sure how to answer that one. I don't know if you are able to.
So for sure, what we can tell parents for now is that parents will be, actually, it's interesting because before this upcoming year, parents needed to have their tax return in front of them so that they could report income from work in their application. The way this application is going to work is that parents will be providing consent. So they create their FSA IDs first. They provide consent for any financial information that is connected with the IRS be transferred over. And so you won't have to worry about transferring any information over beyond what will be required from your tax return unless you are reporting assets. And so again, income from work is going to be, and especially if it's on a tax return, will be transferred for you as long as you're providing consent as a parent. If CalWORKs is reported in your tax return, anything that needs to be imported from a tax return will transfer over. Again, the only thing that's going to be different really is if parents have any assets that they need to be reporting, or if parents have small businesses. And so for right now, parents don't have to worry about the CalWORK income, the CalWORK amount, unless again, we're looking at income from work. And if CalWORKs amounts are included in your tax return, you don't have to worry about reporting anything separately about that at the moment. We will be providing more information as we go on. Carla, Anna, Linda, myself, we are currently completing our training and getting updates from federal student aid. And so again, for now, we don't have to worry about that particular item. But of course, for any parents that do not file a tax return, there will also be an opportunity to manually enter any information that is needed if it's not accessible through some of the data import that's going to be happening.
Did you want me to ask more questions now, or do you want to continue and go back to them?
We can continue and then we'll come back. Yeah. Unless, do you have other questions that are related to
No, I can.
Section about parent guardians who goes on the.
No, I can take them for now.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So we'll continue. All right. So for contributing parents. So for contributing parents, again, once your household has determined, which parent, if any, right? For some students, there won't be parent information that will be going on to these applications, but for any parents who get identified as contributors. So now these parents will be creating an FSA ID. Parents will need to include their name. Very important that they make sure that they're including full legal name, birth date. If the parent has a social security, they'll be able to include it. Starting this, with 24-25 FAFSA, parents that do not have a social security will be able to create FSA IDs. That is not available at the moment, but that will be available shortly. We're waiting for an official date for when that is ready to go. address, phone number, email. Hopefully this is an email that parents have regular access to. If parents do not have an email address, they are encouraged to create one so that they can use it for this process, because you'll need to confirm as part of your steps of creating the FSA ID. So similar to the student, when they create their FSA ID, the parent is going to need to write down their username, their password, backup code. In the past, and sometimes this might, again, it varies per household, but parents sometimes provide this information to the student and the student holds everything. It's important for the parent to also keep a copy of that, because sometimes students might be forgetful, or maybe they're taking care of their username and IDs. So again, it's just important for parents to also keep track of that information, because it's connected, again, in some cases to your social security number. So we want to make sure that we're being very mindful of keeping your information secure. And so in terms of creating your FSA ID, so every student filling out the FAFSA will need an FSA ID. Remember, California DREAM Act does not require an FSA ID, but they do have a username and password process as well, a lot simpler than the FSA ID. And then parents will be creating one as well on the FAFSA. So in order to create this, and there is a YouTube tutorial that we want to share with you that was created about a year ago by Federal Student Aid. And so that'll be a great resource for you all to look at prior to actually creating it, but just wanting to walk you all through some of the steps that we have available. So you'll be able to go to studentaid.gov. This homepage or landing page is going to look a little bit different when the new FAFSA opens up. But if you go on there today or tomorrow, this is what it would look like. And you would click on create account on our top right-hand corner. So that will be part of how you get started. Then you'll be able to click on create account, to get started there. When some of you see this screen, if it looks familiar, there might be a chance that you have created one in the past, maybe for an older student that you have in college. But most of the high school kids likely have not created one yet. So we'll get started in that section. Again, we mentioned it's important to have your info. Very, very important for students when they're creating their FSA ID. We want to verify the legal name, the full name. Some students might have two last names, but they don't always use it for school related, items. If that is the case for any reason, let's verify that the name is correct. We've had students who don't realize they have a second last name until they're applying to college and financial aid. So it's very important that the name we're using is the full one, right? Ideally, what's on your social security number. That also should be the name that students are using on their college applications, because they do match up. And just to share an example, I was working with a student this summer who completed a FAFSA back in late February. So they met the priority deadline of March 2nd this past year, but they were wondering why they had not received financial aid at their community college. I think we were at late July when she came up to us. And we went on to her application. We verified, okay, the application was submitted. Student met the deadline, but for some reason, something wasn't right. And so as we were doing a thorough check, we realized that the name on their FAFSA didn't match the name on the community college application. And so it was almost as if the student hadn't submitted that because it wasn't an exact match. And so we were able to make a correction, and the student was able to still receive financial aid, even though it was already July, but it just meant that it was just a delay. So to avoid delays of that type, let's make sure that from the get-go, when we are creating these accounts, that the data is all accurate. And that might mean for some of your students that we might need to update the names on school records. Maybe the names on school records are missing an initial, maybe they're missing a second last name. So again, very important to make sure that that is accurate. All right, so now after we include the name, social security number, date of birth, we are going to now add some of this other information, such as you get to create a username, which is great. Pick something that is going to be meaningful, that you can remember. You'll be able to create a password. Very important to make sure that you're saving this information down. But what's also great to know is that if for some reason you forget your username, your email address can also serve as the username. So again, very important to also be monitoring emails. So you'll include your username that you choose, email address that you'll be checking regularly, and you'll be creating a password. All right. So and I forgot to point it out, but as you can see up here, it says step 3 of 7. There are essentially 7 steps to creating our FSA ID. We want to be linking your, your address, your phone number. And this is going to be, I know sometimes students are wondering, what if I move? You can always update. This can be something that you can update from time to time if you move throughout the academic year. And it's also important to note that if you recently acquired a new cell phone number, you may not be able to use your phone number for this process. It could be that someone with that number in previous years has a number connected. And so you'll be able to see if you come across that issue, but again, include your address. Rarely does Federal Student Aid mail things out in terms of documentation, but every once in a while that might happen. So you want to make sure that your address is also an address that you are receiving communication at. Communication preferences. So you will be able to indicate, do you want to receive communication by email, by text? It's not required to receive text communication. As you can see, there's going to be some recommended, like email is recommended, but the postal won't be required. The text messages won't be required. That's something that students can opt into, students and parents, and then you can set a preferred language. And then this is the fun part, or not really a fun part for students. They have a tough time with this one, actually, setting some challenge questions. So the challenge questions, hopefully you never have to resort to challenge questions because you did a good job at writing down your username and password in a safe place. But you are able to set up challenge questions from a list, write down your answers. And again, this is helpful for if you forgot the username and password and you don't remember the email that you used. Again, it's rare that you have to use them, but it is one of the steps. And then you will have an opportunity to double check everything, to confirm and verify. Sometimes students, typically students, they go through the process and they almost get to, when they get to these challenge questions, they think they're done, but no. We want to make sure we confirm and verify everything before moving forward, because at toward the end, you will be able to verify your phone and verify your email. So if students and parents, if you don't verify the phone and you don't verify the email, you have not finished the process. So it's going to be important to set up the account recovery, to verify your devices, your accounts, so that you are able to complete your FSA ID process. And usually you, as an individual, student, or parent, will get an email that says your FSA ID has been successfully created. And so if you think you got through the process but didn't get that email, likely it means that you missed one of the items here at the end. So again, they'll text you, they'll send you a code to your email, you go ahead and enter the items, and boom, it will help you to complete the process. And so it's going to be, usually for parents, when they create an FSA ID, because students and parents are required to include a social security number on there, it may not be readily available. So usually for parents more than students, they'll have to wait 1 to 3 days to be able to use the FSA ID. And so just as a heads up, students, they typically don't have that issue, but it's going to be important for everybody to know that you probably want to wait 1 to 3 days to use your account after you've created the FSA ID. Okay, and then I know that we're going to have some questions, and we definitely have time for that. I want to draw your attention really quickly to this document. I know that we have, I think we recently made it live, but it includes all of our events for the year, from the webinars that we pointed out to earlier this afternoon to our senior year or Jumpstart senior year events. We have Cash for College workshops. These will be one-on-one opportunities to provide students with support on FAFSA and California Dream Act when those open up in late December, as you can see from our calendar of events. Council will start these one-on-one events in January. And so starting with the 20th, we have a county financial aid blitz. We will be at 20 different locations in the county for students to drop in, start those FAFSA, start those California Dream Acts, and we have multiple dates and locations listed in the spring semester. So because the application is going to be opening up in late December, possibly very, very late into the winter break, one of the activities that students and parents can be doing now is to start creating those FSA IDs. And so, again, let me go back in here really quickly. So it's going to be helpful within your household to start determining, okay, who is going to be that contributing parent? Who's going to create those FSA IDs? So is it student for sure? We'll need an FSA ID for the FAFSA. And depending on the student's household situation, it will be at least one parent guardian as a contributor. If the student doesn't live with a parent or guardian, again, make sure that we're meeting with counselors to determine if the student will qualify as an unaccompanied minor or unaccompanied youth in their district. And that will be a lot of help for the student, again, not just to make sure that they're properly classified, but also so that they are getting access to any resources they may qualify for. And then for our parents, once there's been a determination on who is the, who is a contributing parent, then we can have those parents start creating FSA IDs. So that'll be part of what the fall semester is going to look like for any senior who will be applying to financial aid.
All right, can I bring a question forward for you?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Let me know if I need to close my screen or leave it like that. I can go to the
there might be some slides you might want to go back to. So
okay.
The one question is, this person is a single parent. They do not have contact or communication with the other parent to know about that higher income. Can they just use their own income? What if they
and just to clarify, is the student a single parent, or is the student living with in a single parent household?
I believe the question is from a parent, and they're saying that they are the single parent. They don't have contact with the other parent, so they don't know if they can use just their own as the parent who the student.
Okay, got it. Okay, so the parent is the one that's asking the question.
I think the parent is asking the question. Yes.
The parent is asking the question. Okay, and so the first piece of for information that's helpful here, or even for the question that the students are going to see, the student will see the question about the parent status. So it's going to start there. So if the parent is married, so in this case, the parent, so maybe just with that situation, if the parent is married, then there's both parents' information need to be provided. But if the parent is not married, then I guess just to share in case that helps to just start the process. This is a helpful chart. And so it'll start with the parent status, but there will be, for example, the student will be able to see, is the parent, never married, divorced, separated. So they will be able to include that. And so the parent, depending on their information, and we might need to just get more information about the specific situation, they might be able to select divorced or separated, depending on their, again, specific case. And so also at the end of the webinar, if the parent wants to share more information, we can definitely stick around after the recording is completed and provide some additional guidance if that helps. But yes, it's going to start from this flow chart. The student will be asked about their parent status, starting from, are they married, never married, separated, divorced, all of that. And that helps to guide whose information we're going to be using on the application.
Okay. And then another person says, I have a son in college, and as a middle income family, we don't qualify for any aid, but they have a daughter who's a 12th grader and who is going to be filling out the FAFSA going to college next year. Will that get taken into account to maybe qualify for something this time around? So if they're going to have 2 students in college instead of just one, will that qualify? Okay,
so for sure, what we can share with the parent is that it's interesting because before the number of students in college was one of the questions that was included in the FAFSA, but moving forward, that actually will not be a question anymore, but something that we can share with any family members, just like I believe when we got to the promise question. When it comes to the four-year universities, of course, because cost of attendance is a little bit different, your income for the household does get calculated into what the student is eligible for. But let's say, for example, that this current 12th grader, if that current 12th grader is interested in community college, just to put an example out there, then the income for the student will not disqualify them from what is it called? The promise. So for example, that student, if they were interested in the promise in attending a community college, they would be able to get that grant to cover their tuition. And so that's very specific to the community college example though. But this upcoming year, the number of students in college will not be used by the colleges to determine the amount of money that a student will be eligible for. So that is one of the new pieces.
Someone asked what tax year information would be used, and I believe it's 2022, correct?
Yes, we are going to be using 2022. We are always using, prior year to guarantee that the financial aid information is available.
So the other question that's still open is just about the link to the one pager. I did put that link in the chat, but this person is saying they could not access it. So we will put a form of it to make that available on the CalSOAP website. But if anyone else is able to access or not access that link, let us know. We want to make sure it is accessible. So hopefully we can fix that to make it accessible. I think everything, I'm just waiting to see if there's any more questions. So if they receive financial aid, like let's say they receive a Cal grant, can it be used to pay for things at a university or only for a college? And so I assume they mean maybe like a community college. So can that aid be used at any type of post-secondary ed?
So yes, students can use, for example, if a student is going to, whether that's a 2-year or 4-year university, in California, for example, you can have Pell Grant and Cal Grant. And so that is all determined by your income, household size, all of that. But you can use it at any California community college or for a university. Trade or vocational schools won't use every single grant, but there are Cal Grant Cs that some students might be able to tap into. Rarely, let's see, there are some trade or vocational schools that will not be accepting sources of aid. And so as your students are narrowing down what type of option they are looking at, it's going to be really helpful to make sure that a financial aid application is going to be accepted there. But again, any California community college will, students based on their income, household size, all of that can be eligible for, or can have a Cal Grant, can have a Pell Grant, a Promise Grant. Those three can also be accessible at CSUs, at UCs, at most, private and independent colleges in the state. And so it's only a little bit, different for some trade or vocational programs. I believe.
Okay. Let's see. Someone says, if I plan to see if my senior qualifies for the GI Bill, can we still apply for FAFSA help?
We definitely encourage students to apply for the FAFSA because your GI Bill may not. So for example, you can supplement, and it's going to be really helpful to find out what exactly your GI Bill covers. So for example, usually the FAFSA, you'll see, the grants, and usually grants will go towards tuition and housing first. And so if that is tapped into and your GI Bill can supplement, for example, a dorm cost or book expenses, that would be great. We do often have students who have GI qualifying parents who don't want to fill out the FAFSA, but it's just to their benefit to be able to tap into any sources of aid that are available for your students. So yes, they can still apply for the FAFSA so that they can maximize aid available.
All right, I don't see any more questions there right now. So that is all we have. It's about 6:56. So I'm going to go ahead and drop if you want to leave any contact information, and I'll make sure our email addresses are in the chat. So if you do have questions and you have a specific one, Claudia's email address is in the chat. My email address is in the chat. You're welcome to contact us. And we also will make sure to put an accessible version of this flyer up on our website, calsoapsandiego.org. Hold on, I think we might have one more. Oh, someone is thanking us for the presentation. You're very welcome, and thank you for attending. Thank you. All right. Let's see, anything else? I think that's it. All right. Well, we can go ahead and conclude the presentation. Thank you. Oh, thank you for the nice comments. Oh, someone says they're not accepted for FAFSA. What options are there to pay for a four-year university? If you are, for example, like maybe on an F or J visa and you don't qualify for the FAFSA or for the DREAM Act, you might want to check with a college financial aid office and see if they accept the CSS profile instead. But if you don't qualify for FAFSA, but you do qualify for the DREAM Act, if you're a DACA student, for example, then you would fill out the DREAM Act instead. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and conclude for tonight, but we will be posting the slide deck tomorrow as well as the recording of this webinar. And thank you everybody for attending. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.